January 15th, 2027, 13:22 p.m., Arctic Ocean, Northwest Passage, Canadian Arctic Archipelago, 74 degrees north latitude, temperature minus 32 Celsius, ice thickness 3 meters, remote isolated, contested. Canada claims Northwest Passage as internal waters. United States claims international strait. Russia claims neither, claims Arctic seabed, claims extended continental shelf, claims resources, claims everything. Arctic is final frontier for territorial disputes. Climate change melts ice, opens shipping routes, reveals resources, creates opportunities, creates conflicts. Today, conflict becomes collision. Russian nuclear icebreaker 50 let Pobedy, 50 years of victory. Largest icebreaker in world, 25,000 tons displacement, 75,000 horsepower, nuclear-powered unlimited range, unstoppable force, breaking through ice, heading west, transiting Northwest Passage. No permission requested from Canada, no notification given, just proceeding. Asserting freedom of navigation, challenging Canadian sovereignty, testing Western response, that's Russian Arctic strategy. Assert presence, ignore claims, create facts. Canadian Coast Guard vessel CCGS Louis S. Saint Laurent. Icebreaker 11,860 tons, diesel-powered, capable but smaller, outmatched but determined. Intercepting Russian vessel. Blocking passage, defending sovereignty. That's Canadian duty. That's territorial integrity. That's national pride. 2 icebreakers. 1 narrow channel, 0 compromise. Welcome to Navy Force. Where Arctic sovereignty becomes ramming contest and climate change creates conflicts over frozen waters and USS Connecticut submarine surfaces between colliding icebreakers, because nuclear submarines are only American presence in region, and preventing war between allies and adversaries requires appearing from beneath ice at perfect moment. Russian icebreaker Captain First Rank Yuri Morozov, 31 years Arctic service, experienced, respected, nationalist, believes Arctic belongs to Russia, historically, geographically, strategically, frustrated by Canadian claims, dismisses American position, determined to demonstrate Russian rights, orders received 5 days ago, transit Northwest Passage, conduct oceanographic research, survey seabed, map resources, ignore protests, proceed regardless. That's authorization, that's mission, that's calculated provocation designed to establish precedent. If Russia transits unchallenged, Russia can transit again and again until passage becomes routine, until sovereignty becomes questionable, until claims become negotiable. That's strategy, that's long game. That's patient assertion of rights through repeated action. Morozov understands this, supports this, executes this. 50 let Pobedy smashes through ice at 3 knots. Slow, steady, inexorable. Nuclear power doesn't tire, doesn't need refueling, doesn't stop. That's advantage, that's capability, that's intimidation. Canadian Coast Guard detects Russian icebreaker 72 hours ago. Satellite surveillance shows entry into Canadian Arctic waters. Course plotted. Intentions clear. Alert transmitted. Canadian government convenes emergency session. Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, Defense Minister, Transport Minister. Arctic sovereignty is Canadian political issue. Northern territories are Canadian identity. Allowing Russian transit unchallenged is political suicide, is national humiliation, is sovereignty surrender, must respond, must challenge, must defend. Orders issued immediately. CCGS Louis S. Saint Laurent deploy, intercept Russian icebreaker, prevent passage, assert Canadian authority, use all necessary measures short of force. That's authorization. That's rules of engagement. That's political requirement with operational ambiguity. What are all necessary measures? What does short of force mean? Coast Guard must interpret, must decide, must act without clear guidance. That's burden of command. That's reality of operations. That's why Captain Larson earns his salary. On Navy Force, we understand Arctic is new frontier for great power competition. Ice melts. Resources appear. Nations compete, conflicts emerge. Subscribe to Navy Force if you believe climate change creates security challenges, and Arctic sovereignty determines northern nations' futures and today tests whether Canada can defend claims against larger power or watch sovereignty erode through Russian persistence. CCGS Louis S. Saint Laurent reaches intercept position 13:07 p.m., blocking formation, vessel positioned across shipping channel, engine maintaining position, ice anchor deployed, not moving, Russian icebreaker approaching, range 8 nautical miles, time to contact 160 minutes at current speed. Captain Larson transmits warning, standard maritime protocol, Russian vessel 50. Let Pobedy, you are entering Canadian internal waters. Northwest Passage requires Canadian permission. You have not requested permission. Permission is not granted. Alter course immediately and depart Canadian waters. Message clear. Authority asserted. Sovereignty declared. Russian response, silence, just continuing, just approaching, just ignoring. At 13:34 p.m., second warning transmitted. Stronger language, explicit consequences. Russian vessel, you are violating Canadian sovereignty. Turn back now or you will be intercepted. Canada will defend territorial integrity. This is final warning. That's escalation. That's explicit threat. That's drawing line. Russian response again, silence. Message received but ignored. Morozov has orders. Orders say proceed. Canadian warnings are expected. Canadian protests are irrelevant. Russian authority supersedes Canadian claims. That's Moscow position. That's Morozov conviction. That's collision course. At 14:47 p.m., icebreakers are visual range. 3 miles separation. Canadian vessel not moving. Russian vessel not stopping. Collision imminent. Larson faces decision. Maintain position and force Russians to ram or maneuver away? Move aside and concede sovereignty? Fire warning shots and escalate to violence? None good, all costly. But maintaining position is only option preserving Canadian claim. Moving aside admits Russian authority. Shooting starts war, so Larson stays, orders engines full ahead. Maintaining exact position. Ice anchor holding, crew braces. Collision possible, maybe probable, maybe inevitable. That's courage, that's duty. That's gambling lives for national sovereignty. Canadian crew understands, accepts, prepares. Damage control teams ready. Fire parties stationed. Medical personnel prepared. Worst case scenarios planned. Best case scenario is Russian vessel turns away. Larson believes it will, must believe it will, because alternative is unthinkable. Morozov sees Canadian vessel blocking, expects this, planned for this, has options. Stop and negotiate. That admits Canadian authority. Unacceptable. Go around. That acknowledges Canadian sovereignty over route. Unacceptable. Ram through. That creates international incident. That damages both vessels. That risks casualties. That's also potentially acceptable if achieves strategic objective, Morozov calculates. 50 let Pobedy displaces 25,000 tons. Louis S. Saint Laurent displaces 11,860 tons. Mass advantage Russia. Hull strength both vessels designed for ice impact. Advantage neutral. Speed differential manageable. Impact would damage both. Might sink neither. Would definitely create crisis. Would definitely establish Russian willingness to use force. Would definitely send message. Morozov decides. Continue course. Maintain speed. Force Canadian vessel to move. Call their bluff. Demonstrate Russian resolve. Orders crew prepare for impact. That's commitment. That's escalation. That's madness. At 15:23 p.m., separation is 800 meters, closing. Impact in 3 minutes. Larson sees Russian vessel not turning, not slowing, not stopping. Realizes Russians serious. Realizes collision imminent. Realizes must decide now, move or hit. Sovereignty or safety, principle or pragmatism. He chooses sovereignty. Maintains position, transmits final message. Russian vessel, you will collide with Canadian government ship. Altering course now is your only option. We will not move. Canada will not yield. That's absolute commitment. That's ultimate bluff call. That's nerves of steel or madness of pride. Canadian crew tense, watching Russian bow approach. 600 meters, 400 meters, 200 meters. Impact seconds away. Then something unexpected. Submarine surfaces. Between icebreakers. USS Connecticut, Seawolf class attack submarine. Black hull breaks through ice. Conning tower rises. American ensign flying. Positioned perfectly between colliding vessels. Physical barrier. Neutral party. Third actor. Crisis interrupter. On Navy Force, we understand submarines are ultimate crisis managers, can appear anywhere, can surface anywhere, can interpose anywhere. Subscribe to Navy Force if you believe American naval power includes preventing allies from fighting and adversaries from succeeding. And today, Connecticut demonstrates submarine diplomacy by becoming literal barrier between collision. Connecticut Captain Commander Sarah Chen, 42 years old, 18 years submarine service, first female Seawolf captain, competent, confident, creative. Submarine has monitored crisis 3 days. Orders from Northcom. Prevent conflict between Canada and Russia. Support Canadian sovereignty claims, prevent Russian precedent setting, but avoid direct confrontation. That's complex mission, requires creativity, requires timing, requires courage. Chen developed plan. Surface between vessels at critical moment, force both to stop, create pause, enable negotiations. Risky. Surfacing through ice is dangerous. Timing must be perfect, position must be exact. But alternative is two icebreakers colliding, creating international crisis, possibly triggering NATO-Russia confrontation, Arctic incident becoming Article 5 situation. Unacceptable, so Chen executed perfectly. Connecticut surfaced 100 meters ahead of 50 let Pobedy. Blocked collision course, forced Russian vessel to stop or ram American submarine. Morozov not stupid, not suicidal, not willing to attack U.S. Navy vessel. Orders emergency stop, full reverse, 25,000 tons of icebreaker. Doesn't stop quickly, but slows, halts, 50 meters from Connecticut. Crisis paused, collision prevented, dialogue enabled. Chen transmits message, open frequency, both vessels here. Russian icebreaker 50 let Pobedy and Canadian Coast Guard vessel. Louis S. Saint Laurent. This is USS Connecticut, United States Navy submarine. We have positioned ourselves between your vessels to prevent collision. I respectfully request both vessels maintain position while we discuss resolution. Canada's sovereignty claims are noted. Russia's navigation rights are acknowledged. But collision serves no one's interests. Let us find solution. That's masterful. That's acknowledging both positions. That's offering face saving for both sides. That's creating space for diplomacy. Morozov, angry. American interference unwanted. But American submarine blocking passage. Must deal with reality. Larson relieved. American support appreciated. But American assumption of authority concerning. Canada's sovereignty is Canada's to defend, not America's to negotiate. Both captains hesitate, both consider options, both recognize Chen created opportunity neither had. Ottawa receives report. American submarine surfaced, intervened, prevented collision. Canadian Prime Minister furious and grateful simultaneously. Furious because American intervention suggests Canada cannot defend own sovereignty. Grateful because collision avoided, international crisis prevented, casualties prevented. Mixed emotions create confused response. What should Canada say? Thank America, protest interference, demand continued support, assert independent capability. Government debates, decides accept American assistance while maintaining Canadian authority. Official statement released. Canada appreciates American naval presence in Arctic. United States is valued ally, but Canadian sovereignty over Northwest Passage is non-negotiable. Russian vessel must depart immediately. That's diplomatic balance. That's maintaining position while accepting help. That's national pride with practical recognition. Moscow receives report. American submarine interfered. Blocked passage. Prevented Russian success. Kremlin calculates. Continue confrontation. That risks fighting U.S. Navy, risks Arctic conflict with NATO, risks escalation beyond manageable levels. Accept American mediation? That grants America authority over Arctic, establishes precedent of American arbitration. Unacceptable long-term. Withdraw and claim moral victory? That's face-saving, that's preserving forces, that's living to challenge another day. Moscow chooses withdrawal with conditions. Official statement released. Russian Icebreaker 50, let Pobedy, completed important oceanographic research in international waters, research complete. Vessel returning to Russian Arctic territory. Russia maintains position that Northwest Passage is international strait. Will continue to assert navigation rights in future. That's declaring victory. That's strategic retreat called mission success. That's Russian propaganda protecting Russian pride. Chen negotiates directly with both captains, commander to commander, professional to professional. Addresses Morozov first. Captain Morozov, your vessel is impressive. Your crew is professional. Your orders I respect, but today is not day for confrontation. Return to your waters. Preserve your vessel, preserve your crew. There will be other days to assert your rights. Not all battles are worth fighting. Respectful, direct, honest. Then addresses Larson. Captain Larson, your courage is commendable. Your defense of sovereignty is admirable, but collision would have damaged both vessels, would have created crisis serving no one. You demonstrated Canada's resolve. That message received. Now let us conclude peacefully. That's honoring both sides. That's providing dignity to both captains. That's enabling withdrawal without humiliation. Morozov considers. Order said proceed. Reality says American submarine blocks way, could go around, but that's longer route. That's fuel consumption. That's acknowledging obstacle, could wait. But Canadian Coast Guard can maintain position indefinitely. American submarine can stay submerged indefinitely. Waiting achieves nothing. Must withdraw, but must frame correctly, transmits message. American submarine Connecticut. Russian Icebreaker acknowledges your position. Out of respect for professional maritime cooperation, we will alter course. Our research in this region is complete. We return to Russian Arctic territory, but Russia maintains rights to international waters throughout Arctic Ocean. That's acceptance phrased as courtesy. That's retreat framed as completion. That's defeat called success. 50. Let Pobedy turns slowly, heading northeast, back toward Russian waters, crisis ending, confrontation de-escalating, collision avoided. Larson watches Russian vessel depart, feels vindication, feels frustration. Vindication because Canadian sovereignty defended, Russian challenge rejected, passage denied. But frustration because American intervention required, Canadian Coast Guard insufficient alone, required U.S. Navy support. That's dependency, that's limitation, that's reality of small nation facing larger power. Canada has sovereignty claims. America has capability to enforce partnership necessary. Pride must accept this. Larson transmits message. USS Connecticut, thank you for intervention. Canadian Coast Guard appreciates American naval presence. Request continued coordination on Arctic security. That's grace. That's professionalism. That's accepting help while maintaining dignity. What did Navy force learn from Arctic collision? First, climate change creates conflicts. Melting ice enables shipping, enables resource access, enables territorial disputes. Arctic is battleground for next century. Second, sovereignty requires capability to defend. Canadian claims are valid legally, but insufficient capability to enforce against larger power required American support. Alliance matters. Third, creative solutions prevent wars. Chen's submarine surfacing was unconventional, risky, brilliant. Prevented collision without firing shot. Fourth, icebreakers are strategic assets. Russia has 40 icebreakers, nuclear and conventional. Canada has dozen, mostly aging. United States has 2. plus 1 under construction, capability gap enormous. Russia dominates Arctic physically. 5th submarine presence matters. Connecticut invisible until needed. Then appeared perfectly. That's strategic advantage. That's deterrence through presence. That's American naval power at finest. Final lesson. Arctic disputes are permanent. Today's crisis resolved. Tomorrow's crisis approaching. Russia will challenge again. Canada will defend again. America will support again. Pattern repeats. Ice continues melting. Routes continue opening. Resources continue revealing. Competition continues intensifying. No final resolution. No permanent settlement. Just repeated confrontations. Repeated negotiations. Repeated crises. That's Arctic future. That's climate change reality. That's great power competition in frozen waters. Nations must prepare, must invest, must cooperate, must establish rules before rules are written in blood. Subscribe to Navy Force for Arctic crises no one discusses, Russian icebreakers versus Canadian sovereignty, American submarines between colliding vessels, climate change enabling territorial disputes, melting ice creating conflicts, professional mariners preventing disasters, crisis management through creative thinking, all demonstrated today, all will repeat tomorrow, because Arctic is contested. Resources are valuable, nations are determined, ice is melting, confrontations are inevitable. We'll be watching, we'll be reporting, we'll be explaining. Stay with Navy Force, because Arctic matters more than most realize. Northern sovereignty determines Southern security. Frozen conflicts shape thawed futures. Understanding requires attention to region most ignore. We don't ignore, we explain, we demand you care, because Arctic today determines world tomorrow.